Hello everyone, Firebat here, and I've been asked to take part in the Evil Essentials, where I try and maybe show you some things, teach you some mechanics, generally try and increase people's game knowledge. So hopefully this ends up doing that. I've prepared a slideshow here today, and I'd like to speak on building decks slash playing against Rogue. So first off, I started with a question: is Rogue unstoppable? A lot of players have been saying that it's broken, it needs to be nerfed, there's yada yada yada, so many problems with it. And I don't know, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Let's dive into it. I want to focus on trying to answer the most popular Rogue deck lists. So we did a little bit of background research here and found that these were kind of the most popular Rogue deck lists that you'll be finding on the ladder. And we want to play around with the similarities in these deck lists more so than things that are abnormal. If something's only in one of the lists, it's a lot less likely to have it happen, so it's not going to be something that we're going to want to try and play around and avoid. So just kind of breaking it down, every rogue plays double backstab, every rogue plays double prep. Most rogues play 2 copies of Deadly Poison, most rogues play 2 deckhands, all rogues play 2 eviscerates, most rogues play 2 saps. All rogues play 2 evil miscreants, and most rogues play Hench Clan Thug. All rogues play double SI7, and pretty much every rogue plays Waggle Pick and the general pirate package combo. So these are kind of the things you want to try and focus on playing around and focus on building your deck to be able to defeat. Looked at some ladder data, came to the conclusion here, maybe it's not unbeatable. We saw a tempo rogue list, granted rogue on rogue. You know, is it really the answer if we're saying Rogue is beatable only by Rogue? And it has a unique inclusion. It includes the Crystallizer, which is a 1-mana 1/3. And then we see Zoo Warlock having about 54%, pretty large sample size, and some smaller sample size cases having even greater results against Rogue. So we're seeing some answers pop up there. And of course, the answer everyone knows, Control Warrior. Why is Control Warrior so good against Rogue, but no other control decks can do anything about it? A lot of people have been saying, oh, it's just Dr. Boom, it's just this. But is that really the whole picture? Is there not something more? But generally, looking at this ladder data, we can come to the assumption that decks can be made to beat Rogue. It's been done. There's ladder data that supports it. So what are these decks doing that we're not doing, and how do we figure out how to beat Rogue? Since it is possible, I believe that if we map out Rogue's turns, we can identify weak points in its turns and defeat them. I believe that this can be done pretty easily, and with the early turns as the focus. And the reason why I want to focus on the early turns is because if you noticed on the previous slide, the duration of games against Rogue are generally 5 to 7 minutes long on average. So most of the time the game is being decided and finished quite quickly. So I think the early turns is the best area where we want to try and focus our attention. So we start with turn 1. Rogue options on turn 1. They don't have the most amount of options in the world. They have the South Sea Deckhand or the Backstab, and that's about it that they can do on 1 mana. And what do these cards do? They can answer 2 health minions. So if you play a 1-drop with 2 health, Rogue can kill it very easily, but they're not developing while answering, so it's not even that bad for you. Rogue can develop a 1 health minion. So if you're trying to answer Rogue's development, you need to be able to kill a deckhand on turn 1. Not the biggest challenge for most decks. Things start to get a little more difficult against Rogue when they move on to turn 2, especially if they have the coin. The coin's the scary part. When they're off coin, they're pretty tame. They usually just dagger up. Sometimes they play a deckhand. If they've already played one, why not? And they have the ability to backstab something to remove something or to coin SI something. So they can answer 2 health minions very easily. So you do not want to be playing minions with 2 health and hoping that they stick against Rogue on turn 2, because they're bound to either have coin SI or backstab or just the deckhand to play alongside something. So it's not great to try and develop 2 health minions this early on. And if you're trying to answer Rogue, you have to be kind of afraid because they can play this Miscreant, which is a 5 health minion, and if it sticks around and they get the Evolve Lackey, they're able to then upgrade it into a random 4 mana cost minion. So controlling Rogue and shutting down its early game, answering a 5 health minion can be very difficult, but fortunately it only happens on the coin. Rogue's a good deck because it has a few of these high roll points with Preparation and Edwin Van Cleef. I'm not going into all of the different possible high rolls that Rogue can get because there's a lot. For every deck can have different power spikes. I'm just going over the most expected things to happen on this turn in the game. And Coin Evil Miscreant is one of the most powerful plays Rogue can do. If they're on the coin, it's super terrifying, and it's pretty hard to shut down. Almost no class can do it. And then next up on turn 3, Rogue has the most options of any of its early turns by far. Turn 3 is Rogue's like power turn. If they could just do so many different things. They can answer minions up to 5 health while still developing things. So that's pretty crazy, right? 5 health. There's not very many 3-drops that have 6 health in the game. So pretty much everything that you develop is going to get killed here, because Backstab plus SI plus the Dagger Charge that they developed from turn 2 can just slaughter something. They can also play any of their 1-drops, Deckhand, or let's say a Lackey that they got from coining out the Miscreant last turn, plus Eviscerate to be able to remove things. They can go Deadly Poison on the dagger they have equipped, plus Eviscerate. So their removal options are crazy. And then their development options aren't very weak either. They can play a Hench Clan Thug and Swing, thus creating a 4/4 minion that it must be dealt with. And then they can also just develop their hand with plays like Backstab Raiding Party, or Preparation Raiding Party. So there's lots of different plays that Rogue can do on turn 3. So they can answer minions to 5 health while also developing tempo, and they can develop plays of a 5 health or 4 health minion that you kind of have to kill. The Miscreant, even though it's a 1/5, the threat of them getting the Evolution Lackey makes it pretty much mandatory for you to try and kill it if you're a control deck. So it's pretty tough to interact with Rogue's turn 3. That's their power spike. That's the most terrifying turn. Turn 4 rolls around, and Rogue's options are still pretty plentiful, but have kind of calmed down a little bit. They can answer 3 health minions while developing tempo a lot of the time. And if they've played Raiding Party the turn before, then they're pretty much guaranteed to have the Waggle pick. So then they can answer 4 health minions while developing tempo, because if they played Raiding Party, they often have Dread Crusaders as well. So you're looking at either 3 or 4 health development plays getting smashed while they get to add stats onto the table. The reason why I have it separated like this, and where I have the answer 3 health up here and then answer 4 health down here, is because the 4 health isn't as likely. They're not super likely to have Waggle pick and be able to Dread Corsair if they didn't play Raiding Party the turn before. However, they are pretty likely to have ways to deal with 3 health minions when you think of things like Backstab, Deadly Poison, all of that stuff, which can come down alongside any of their 3-drops with their Dagger Charge. Or even just 1-drop Lackeys from the previous turn alongside SI7 plus the Dagger Charge if they got a Miscreant down, things like that. So most of the time they're going to be killing anything you play that has 3 health while also putting things additionally on the table. And you only really have to worry about the 4 health corner case if they've played the Raiding Party. So let's dive into this a little bit more to try and understand what I'm talking about a little bit here with all these turns. So developing versus Rogue. If you're trying to be the person adding stats to the table, what do you have to do to play around Rogue's removal? We charted out their turns, right? So on turn 1, you have to be afraid of Backstab and Deckhand. So 3 health minions are really strong. Rogue just doesn't have great ways to interact with 3 health minions. And they really don't want to be throwing a Backstab away on a 1/3 minion. So that 1/3 stat line as 1-drops is crazy powerful versus Rogue. Turn 2, don't play any 2 health minions. 2 health minions just get slaughtered by Coin SI or just simply a Backstab on them. So they're really rough. They can kind of kill 3 health minions, right? Because they can Backstab the 3 health minion and then dagger up and swing the Dagger Charge. But doing that costs half of their development because they're only left with a 1-charge dagger rather than a 2-charge dagger. So it's kind of worth it. But yeah, 2 health minions are a big no-no against Rogue on turn 2. You're going to want to play 2 3s in your deck, or just have some sort of plan to deal with that. Turn 3 is pretty tough if you're developing. If you're trying to aggro down Rogue with a bunch of minions and you want turn 3 to go well for you, you need to buff your minions to 6 health or play a minion with 6 health. Because you have to worry about Backstab plus I, a 1-drop plus Eviscerate, and Blink Fox plus Vendetta, and all of those can come in with a Dagger Charge. So they can all get up to 5 damage very easily. There's many ways for Rogue to deal 5 damage on turn 3, and it's super likely that they can do one of them. Yeah, developing on turn 3 is rough. And then turn 4, the way you develop against a rogue, you kind of have to look at what's happened in the game thus far to know what to play around. If they've played Raiding Party, then you want to develop 5 health or multiple minions because you want to play around Waggle Pick. So if you have a bunch of multiple minions out, Waggle Pick only swings at 1 minion. So that you can impede them from being able to develop that very cleanly because they can kill 1 minion and the other minion gets to hit him in the face. And you're pretty happy with that situation. Or you can play something with 5 health that just doesn't die to Waggle Pick. And then you're forcing them to play Waggle Pick and then sort of like hit that minion to set up to hit it again or to go face. Because they want to be going Waggle Pick plus their Dread Corsairs. And if they've played Miscreant, you're going to want to develop minions with 4 health so that they can't be able to use their dagger charge that they've equipped plus the SI7 or the 1 mana deal 2 damage lackey plus their dagger to remove things. So it's a little bit more lax on what you can develop during that situation because you're not forced to try and set up to deal with the Waggle Pick. And then moving right along, how do we control Rogue? So let's say you're playing a control deck, you don't want to be developing a bunch of minions. What do you do to try and respond to what Rogue's developing? And, each deck you don't always have to be developing and you don't always have to be controlling, right? You can be different roles on any given turn, honestly, in Hearthstone. So I'm just dividing them in these sections because I think it's easier to go through them all at the same time. And then the next slide, I'm going to talk about what do you want to do on any given turn to optimally build something to beat Rogue. And we'll break it down into more specifics then. So turn 1, you want to answer the 1 health minion of the deckhand. Simple enough. You want to be able to have a class that could hero power the deckhand down, or you want, any way that where after they play deckhand on turn 1, you can take care of it, which shouldn't be too difficult. If that's where you're struggling against Rogue, then you got a problem. Turn 2, well, that's where Priest struggles against Rogue, and that's why that class isn't very good. Turn 2, answer a 5 health minion. Now this is kind of Fantasyland. This is the best case scenarios you can maybe answer this 5 health minion, but reality, almost no class can answer the coin Miscreant. That is like the dream play from Rogue. And then some percentage of the time they're going to evolve that into a 4-drop, and you're going to be immediately under the hammer. And no class can do anything about that. So you can't really set up to beat that. More often than not, they're just going to dagger on 2, though, and then you don't really have to control anything. They just have a dagger. Turn 3, you have to answer a 4 or 5 health minion. And that would be Hench Clan Thug after swinging with a dagger turns into the 4 health minion, a 4/4, or the Miscreant coming down this turn with Backstab, or a Preparation Thing Miscreant. So it is super important that you're able to answer the 5 health Miscreant because, like I've been saying, there's a lackey that can evolve it, and if they evolve it into a 4-drop, it's just a huge tempo swing that is a pain in the neck to deal with. So you're going to want to try and have some sort of answer for that. And right now, I find a lot of decks are struggling versus Rogue because they don't realize the importance of removing that 1/5, and they don't have an answer to set up to do it. One of the ways you can set up an answer to do it would be making sure you develop a 1-drop on turn 1. If you have a 1/3 in play now and it sticks around because all they do is dagger on turn 2, now on turn 3 you don't need to answer a 5 health minion. You only need to answer a 4 health minion because your 1/3 can bump into that 1/5. So it's important to kind of look at the bigger picture here and maybe try and focus on having enough 1-drops where you can get a 1/3 down and then you can deal 4 damage on turn 3, and then you can kind of combine the 2 styles of developing and controlling to make sure you can answer this Miscreant in time. And then after that, turn 4, you have to answer the weapon of the Waggle Pick, or you have to answer, a 3 health minion can come down a lot of the time on turn 4 alongside one of the lackeys or something like that. But in general, you want to be setting up to deal with the Waggle Pick because the deck functions so powerfully when it has the Waggle Pick up. Weapon removal is almost essential if you're trying to just go for pure control. From this analysis, what conclusions can we draw? Is it better to develop or is it better to control? What do we do? How do we build a deck that does well versus Rogue with this information? We know that they're weak on some turns, but what are they more weak to? And so we break it down like this. Turn 1, it's better to develop. Rogue has only 1/1-drop. So most often you're not going to be able to remove anything. They're going to be doing nothing. And what better way to capitalize on them doing nothing than doing something? And if you're going to do something, then do something that they can't beat. So you play a 1-drop with 3 health. That is step 1 to beating Rogue. Play a 1-drop with 3 health. It's super powerful. They can't interact with it. Turn 2, is it better to develop or control? It's better to develop. Rogue can only answer 2 health minions while being productive. Any other answer to things, they're then forgoing their dagger, or they're not coining something out, and they're just in general not doing anything good. So even just playing a 2-3 takes away a dagger charge from them and can hinder their development later on in the game. So it's pretty fantastic to just get something on the board on turn 2 with 3 health. Ideally 4 health, then they can't kill it at all. But not too many 4 health 2-drops that exist in the game. And then turn 3, is it better to control or better to develop? Turn 3, it's way better to control. Rogues can answer up to 5 health while still developing threats. 5! So you can play a 3 mana, 5 health minion, and Rogue can be like, you know what, I'm just going to kill that and develop a 3-3. So that's insane. That's one of the turns where it's like very difficult to try and develop against Rogue. So if you can, you want to maybe do like Master's Call on that turn and develop your hand to be able to create a swing turn later, or develop a weapon on that turn and then play minions out afterwards and respond with the weapon. Instead of developing onto the board directly, you want to on turn 3 be setting up to control them by doing something other than putting stats on the board, which would be removing their minions, drawing cards, anything like that. Any way that sets up your hand to be in a better position in the future. Turn 4, is it better to develop or control? And I would say turn 4 is a very solid turn to develop. One of the reasons why you wouldn't develop is maybe you're baiting them to play Waggle Pick and you have the answer, the removal already. But most of the time on turn 4, Rogue wants to be playing Waggle Pick. So you want to make it hard for them to do this. And the ways to do that would be to develop a minion with 5 health, or develop multiple bodies so that their weapon can't really interact with you all together that well. So that's kind of, if you look at the first 4 turns of Rogues, I know that's like a lot to digest and a lot of material kind of just thrown at you all at once, but that's how you can kind of interact with Rogue's Curve to find success. And I want to take a brief second here now to maybe look at some of those previous decks before, and you can notice if you see any similarities with this analysis we're having. So if we look here at this Tempo Rogue deck, for example, that's having success against Rogue, I pointed it out earlier, there's this Crystallizer in here, not weapon removal, right? Like a little bit earlier on in the metagame, people were teching in weapon removal to deal with Rogue. Turns out that wasn't the problem. The problem is being able to control the board and being able to set up to deal with the evil miscreant. So this Crystallizer is offering great win rate and actually a decent sample size. So the 1-drop, it's kind of supporting the data that we found while trying to analyze the curve of the Rogue. And then if you look at Warlock, why is Warlock having success? Well, Warlock also has 1/3 minions. They have the Crystallizer, they have the Voidwalker. They have an area where they're kind of weak, where most of their 2-drops are just 2/2s. So playing a 2-drop on 2 is pretty bad. They can circumvent that, though, by playing either the Egg, which is not vulnerable, or they can play multiple 1-drops rather than playing a 2-drop, so they can kind of get around it. But notably, they have a 3-mana minion here with 6 health. So on turn 3 against Rogue, they can safely develop. And Rogue can't interact well with that because they can only do up to 5 damage. So it fits that breakpoint that we found in their curve. So they're able to find success there with the Zoo Warlock. And then finally, the Control Warrior rolls around. And this Control Warrior build has something a bit interesting. It has double Militia Commander, which is not very standard. So it also has the 1/3. I want to point out that again, the 1/3. All 3 of these decks have the 1/3 stat line on a 1-drop, and that's just super crucial for being able to shut down that miscreant in a timely fashion, or make it easier anyway. And then moving forward throughout the deck, it comes and you have double Militia Commander. Militia Commander is a 2/5, which when you play it gains +3 attack for that turn. So it gets up to 5 damage to reach the breakpoint of being able to stop the evil miscreant in time to prevent it from being able to do the evolve, which can snowball the early game, and just generally get it off the board and let it stop being annoying. So all of these decks kind of do the things that we found in the curve that can be acceptable ways to try and stop Rogue. And I feel that there are other decks out there, other classes, that also have this same ability. So I think if we took a look in the deck builder and tried to build a deck, and we used these principles, we would find that Rogue is beatable. We just need to make sure that we can deal with the evil miscreant, and we need to make sure that we can fit all of the breakpoints necessary. So I challenge you to go out there and build a deck and smash some Rogues trying to use these breakpoints and principles that I tried to highlight when looking over the possibilities of what Rogue can do. You know, tweet at me if you have some decks with some success, and let's stop Rogue together. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. I appreciate all the support, and go out there and conquer the ladder.